and thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Why I Love Flagler County, your local podcast spotlighting local businesses and local residents on what they like to do in Flagler County. So today, I'm super excited to have my guest, Vincent, with me today. Vincent, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Macy.
Of course. Well, Vince and I we met through the local BNI chapter, and you are also a friend of Kim Sunshine, who was also a guest previously. I think a little while ago, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. And she's just a great person to connect through. So I'm really excited to learn more about you and your business and then coming here in Flagler. So I'll start off really easy. What is your journey, coming down here to Flagler to Palm Coast?
Well, before I get in that, I actually met you before the
Oh,
BNI.
right.
At,
Yes.
you came to our Rotary Club.
I did.
So yeah,
Yeah, I apologize. We talked. I saw him at the Rotary Club, but we actually had a real conversation at BNI. I promise I did not forget. Our real conversation happened at BNI. I know you briefly talked to my dad. You greeted us, I believe, at the Rotary Club.
yes, Rotary
Yeah.
is one of the things that I'm deeply involved in here. But you asked about my journey to Palm Coast or to
Hmm.
Flagler County
Yep.
specifically. Um, like I think the majority of people in town, I came here because family was already here.
Mm.
I was an attorney and I was practicing law in the Washington, D.C. area um, during the economic downturn of 2008. At that time, my father-in-law had well, he was diagnosed with cancer. He had cancer surgery. And my wife and I said, one day they're going to call and say, you have to come down here.
Mm.
So we'd be better off if we were there or close by. And so we looked in the areas and we ended up moving into the same town with them in Palm Coast so that we could be around. It was a good time for us to make a change,
Mm.
and it's worked out very well for us.
That's great. You might have to, how long have you been in Palm Coast now?
I came in 2012, so I've
Oh,
been
okay.
here
Oh, yeah. So you've been here a
almost 12
while.
years.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've been here for a while, so I'm sure you've just seen the community completely transform before your eyes.
Yes. Now I don't know how long you've been around, but
Hmm.
if you've been here for a few years, you might recognize me as a former city councilman of Palm Coast.
Oh,
That was only
really?
for a few months. I
Oh,
filled in,
gosh.
was appointed to fill a vacancy and
Oh,
finished out the term there. But it was a very exciting term with some major changes happened to the city at that time. So I was
really? When
glad to
was
be a part
that?
of that.
I came about 2 years ago.
Yeah, so I believe it was 2018.
Mm.
Um, and it was we I was on the board that fired the last city manager, not the last city manager, but the city manager at the
Yeah.
time, had been city manager for several years.
Yeah.
And there was a conflict had arisen, and I was a member of the city council when we made that decision.
Wow, that's really cool. Well, I'd like to circle back if we have time at the end because I have a few questions about that. But I'd like you to also talk about, so you're a lawyer in the area and your specialty is guardianship. So first off, for anyone who doesn't know, and maybe this is just a shameless about me, explain a little bit about guardianship. What do you help people with?
Sure. A guardianship, let me just say that I've been on my own focusing in this area since 2021.
Mm.
For 8 years prior to that, I worked for a big firm in town doing all kinds of different things. But I found guardianships near the end of that position, and I decided that that was an area I really felt called to.
Hmm.
A guardianship is the legal process of managing someone else's affairs when they're unable to do so for themselves.
Mm.
It might be a child who legally can't manage money until they turn 18. But with the aging population we have in Florida, a lot of times it is a parent or grandparent who is facing diminishing faculties, possibly the onset of dementia,
Hmm.
and someone needs to step in and take care of them.
Hmm. Awesome. So you said that you went off on your own in 2021. How was that experience of, you worked with a big firm, but now you're on your own? Is there anything that you started to encounter? You're like, oh my gosh, I did not realize this was something that I would have to think about or I'd have to do or anything like that.
It's a difficult move. And
Mm.
I say on my own, I really am on my own and I don't have staff. And that's the biggest
Mm.
difference between working for a large firm and working on your own. If you have a large firm, you have access to their resources for um, secretarial help, for paralegal help if necessary. All of these things are available um, in various online forms where you can sign up for memberships, call centers, things like that that
Hmm.
deal with that for a solo attorney. I haven't felt the need to do that yet, but it does
Mm,
mean having to learn all of the things that I used to just say to the
yeah.
paralegal, can you get sure this is done? I had
Mm,
to step in and learn how exactly is that done? And I like that actually. I think that it's sort of the old philosophy. I don't know if McDonald's still does this, but they used to have anybody who was an executive in McDonald's had to spend time doing every job at McDonald's,
mm,
flipping burgers, managing the takeout window, etc. So knowing how it's all done, and I think
mm.
that's good for a lawyer to know what are these things that are going on and actually develop a system whereby they can be managed well.
Yeah. Also, I'm sure you are your own like best perfectionist. So you're like, all right, this is done the exact way I need this to be done because you are doing it. And if someone asks a question, you're like, actually, I do know how this was done because I was the one who did it. So I'm
Yes,
sure that's been an interesting perk that you're like, oh, I didn't realize this is a perk. Hopefully the flip side to doing a little bit of the mundane stuff you hadn't done before. Um,
I don't mind the mundanes.
okay. That
It's
no, that's good.
there's nothing. I actually haven't
Yeah.
run into anything I don't like doing except possibly scheduling my
Mm,
calendar. But um, that's the nice thing about working for myself is that I can set my own hours.
yeah.
So if I decide at 10 o'clock at night that I need to get something done, I can sit down and do it. If I wake up at 4 in the morning, my head's spinning with the case going on, I can get up and just work on it. Um,
Yeah. You have that flexibility. I know a lot of people when they talk about flexibility, they usually talk about the other side where it's just like, if I don't want to do it anymore, this is when I will call off. But it's awesome as well if you're like, all right, I don't have to report it to anyone at this time. I can just do that extra stuff while it's in my head, which is obviously super helpful. So before we wrap it up, like I mentioned, I'd like to circle back to you mentioned you very briefly did that stint with the city council. Is there anything that you learned through that experience, that you maybe didn't know you were gonna learn? I mean, I'm sure it was very, like, last minute, and then anything that you learned from that experience that has carried on now to opening your own practice?
I'm not sure. Well, I suppose some of the things that were, as a city councilman, that would relate to the practice. Again, I was in the position for, I think, 6 months, so it wasn't like I built up a big reputation as a
Sure.
councilman. People would
Yeah.
just recognize me now. They
Mm,
say, "Oh, I've seen you somewhere." Oh, yeah. Well, I used to be in the city council, and that's often where it is.
mm,
But I learned a lot about how the city runs
mm,
and a lot about how what actually happens in government is different
mhm.
from what most people think happens in government. And so when you're in a council meeting and people come up and they have an issue and they address it, there are limitations to how the council people can respond.
Right.
And there are limitations to what they can do. They can't always address it. But the expectation of the citizenry is you can do everything because you're the people in charge. We live in a
Mhm,
place where we live in a country that likes capitalism and they like people to own property and decide what they want to do with their property. So if somebody owns a piece of commercial property next door to your house and they want to put, a another storage unit, they want
sure.
to put a strip mall, that they can do it. Go to the city council and say, don't allow this to be there. Well, they were zoned for commercial. The private person owns that. They want to build a commercial property.
Mhm,
Where it does come in is that they say, well, this was zoned for commercial, but I think I could make more
mhm,
money by putting an apartment building on there. So I want it to be zoned for high density housing. Then people come
mhm,
in, they have to actually change the plan that's been approved. They need the city council to approve that change, and that's where all those issues come up with people don't want a particular type of business or housing near them, and they go complain to the city council. The thing to remember is the loud voices that come to city council are not the entire over 100,000 people that live in Palm Coast.
right.
And so you get that perspective. And just because you don't necessarily do something that they ask you to do doesn't mean you didn't listen to them.
Right.
That does translate to, or maybe, I don't know which, I've been practicing law long enough that maybe I took my legal skills there.
Sure.
But the similarity is when I deal with clients, I can't promise you what the judge is going to do. I can
Right.
do my best. I can lay out, here's the parameters of what I can do for you, and try to make that communication happen so that they understand. I am listening to you. I am trying to achieve what you want to achieve. I can't guarantee
Hmm.
it won't always happen because I'm not the only player in the system.
Right.
So
Yeah.
those are similarities between how those two things work. I
Yeah.
was somewhat familiar with the city already because I've had to deal in my professional life with things like Freedom of Information Act
Mm.
requests. Everyone calls them that in Florida. It's the Sunshine Act,
Oh,
government in the sunshine, but it's the same essentially how
gotcha.
all your public records are available.
Oh, I had no idea. I mean, it's super interesting. Growing up, my dad was very active, where we used to live with politics, and I knew plenty of people on city council, mayor, all of these things. So I know a, a little bit here and there, maybe a little bit more than some people do who have never been in that world. But it's super interesting to hear how down here Palm Coast is, because I'm sure it's all different up north and stuff. So that's really interesting to learn.
Yeah,
Um,
Florida has a unique system for its government.
oh, okay.
The state of Florida is the government of Florida.
I gotcha.
County is a subsection of the state,
Right.
still the state's authority. A city is a subsection of the state, not necessarily the county it's in, but they share things in common.
Yeah. I think it's similar to how where I used to live, but I wouldn't remember because I was like 7 when my dad was the most active in that world. Um, but before we wrap it up, like we mentioned, we met first at Rotary, and then a few days later, you were visiting the local BNI chapter. What are some of the places that you'd recommend for new people to go? Events, communities, groups, anything like that, so they can kind of get out there, get to know the businesses, the neighbors a little bit more, connect with the community.
Well, as I mentioned, Rotary is a big one. If you're here at Christmas time and you see all the lights at town center, people think the city is doing a display. The city is not doing a display. The city puts up a tree. The rest of it is the Flagler County Rotary Club, the Rotary Club of Flagler County. That is a major event that we put on. People make donations there, so it is our major fundraising event. But Rotary would be a good group to be involved in, and there are two different Rotary clubs right now locally. There's also a satellite club in Bunnell. So there's opportunities out there if their schedule doesn't fit someone
Hmm.
else. And I like the organization because it is an organization that has very clear goals of doing things that I think are admirable, and
Hmm.
so I'm sure that. As far as the town, I mean, I have a hobby, painting miniatures, playing board games, and I'm kind of happy to find out that this just past year, 2023, a new store opened up in town that is a game store out on US 1,
Okay.
and so that's a if people are interested in that hobby, that's an opportunity to go to. There's always something going on. This weekend was an arts fair and a farmers market over in Flagler Beach. Um, the city has events in town center all the time. Uh, During the summers, there's Friday night movie nights where they put up a giant projector screen in the park,
Right.
and everybody can come see it. Other groups that I'm part of are I'm on the board of directors for the Flagler Humane Society, and they have their uh, monthly, pretty much monthly dinner nights where you can bring your pets. And sometimes, like the October one is Halloween theme, and people bring their pets in costumes.
Hmm.
Then they have other events. Everybody seems to have a golf tournament. Rotary has a golf tournament.
Mm.
Main Society has a golf tournament.
Right, and you guys just did pickleball as well for the for the Alzheimer's,
Alzheimer's,
the
yes.
local branch. So that's super cool.
Yes, pickleball is another thing. Somebody told me he was going to teach me, but I've never followed up on that. So I've never played.
Maybe it's time.
I want to pick
This is your reminder.
Many of your watchers are looking to teach someone pickleball.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Vincent, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. It was super interesting to learn. I had no idea you were on the city council, so it's cool to learn that, how Florida works, and then obviously a little bit about your business and then opening that. So I'll make sure I have all of your information in the description. So if people need any help, will need anyone to go to, need any guidance, I'm sure that they can call up on that and find that a little bit easier. So again, thank you so much for the time. I really
You're
appreciate it.
you're welcome. And like any lawyer in town will probably answer is if you have a legal issue that's maybe not in my area,
Right.
know someone who does it, and I
Yeah.
can certainly put you in touch with someone who does it. I'm not limited to guardianships, but
Mm-hmm.
that's really the main focus. I get the most personally rewarding out of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a lawyer on the podcast, but today I had two. So this is super cool for me. I learned a lot about lawyers, and all of the cool laws. Well, again, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. To anyone at home, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I